In this video, I want to give you a high-level overview of the webinar process that I use.
This video is brought to you by EpiPies Academy.
And when I say process, what I'm talking about is all of the events surrounding the webinar itself. The webinar itself occurs at a specific date and time, but there's a lot of other events that occur before and after the webinar that are important and make the webinar effective. So I'm going to start with the email. And I'd like you not to worry so much about the software that I'm using to do these things. There are many different pieces of software you can use that we talk about in the course. This is just what I happen to use. Let's focus on the content here of the email. So this is the last in a series of emails people get in order to get them to sign up for the webinar. This one I send about 15 minutes before the webinar. The title is, "Are you in yet?" So we always want to focus on that fear of missing out. And people who receive this, get surprised. Am I in yet? What am I missing? And we call the webinar a training, the quickest route to your first job in development, and you can do it all right from home, which is the title of this webinar, tonight, 8 p.m. New York time. I like to use New York time, one, because I live in that time zone, but also because it's an easy time zone for people to calculate back to. You're not going to want to miss this. And we talk specifically about 3 things that they'll learn or benefits of attending the webinar. And then we have a register now button. I mentioned this is the last in a series of emails that people got. I usually send 3 or 4 emails reminding them of the webinar. Not everybody opens every email. Some people need reminders. So this is a good way to fill the room. From here, they go to a landing page that reinforces what the webinar is about. So if they click through in the email, this is the landing page that they go to. We reinforce that there's only 100 spots available, so we want them to get in now. We reinforce the day and time of the webinar. We also have a countdown clock. Again, we're very specific about the knowledge they'll gain during the webinar. We do want them to be aware of exactly what they're going to learn. And the webinar material reflects this information. So how to compete against more experienced degreed developers in the entry-level job market. Well, I train developers, so this is a specific point in the webinar itself. Each one of these you've got to actually deliver on. We also have a registration bonus, which is a personal roadmap worksheet to take them on their first development job, take them to their first development job, and then the Claim My Spot Now, which gives them the form to fill out, which gives them a spot in the webinar. Pretty straightforward. They'll give their email, first name, and last name. And again, all of these components we go over in detail elsewhere in the course, so don't worry too much about them specifically. What I want you to get out of this is the process and kind of the flow that we're going through. We'll deliver the webinar itself using standard slides. I'm not going to show them to you right now, but it's slides, about 40 minutes, and then 10 minutes of the offer that I'm making, and then 10 minutes of Q&A, standard webinar format. So that's delivered at the date and time that's been promised. And then we have a follow-up series. The follow-up series is an email series, and they get this starting immediately after the webinar until some closing period, at which point the closing occurs. Let's take a look at a couple of the emails in here. This is the one they get directly after the webinar. So this webinar reiterates there's a recording, because a lot of people won't be able to stay for the whole time, so they ask about the recording. They always want to get that up front. And also any handouts that I give. And these handouts generally are simple summaries of the webinar itself. Then we talk about the offer that was made at the end of the webinar. And the reason we reiterate this is, again, not everybody stayed for the whole webinar, but some people were probably overwhelmed by the information, so we want to give them time to read about the offer itself. And this is the time I'm going to make an extensive discussion, give all the information about the offer. This countdown clock goes until the offer ends. Usually we give 48 to 72 hours to claim the webinar offer. And then we go over the details of the offer, similar to how I did in the webinar itself. So we talked about, in this particular webinar, the roadmap. We talked about valuable certifications that someone could earn and the benefit of those certifications. Other things that are included in the offer. Keep in mind, my offer is a high dollar offer costing almost $2,000. So your offer may not need all of these things because the price point may be lower. We offer some bonuses, we offer a guarantee, and we offer some type of limitation. And then we have click-throughs to take advantage of the offer, and these click through to sales pages that are fairly standard sales pages. And this is the whole idea. Everything about the webinar is designed to get them to this point in which they can actually buy. And this webinar had two payment options, a $1,200 payment option or 2 payments of $699. But essentially your webinar is driving to figure out who your buyers are and get them to this last page where they can actually buy. And that's the webinar process. It is essentially a miniature funnel, starting with an email list of targets, narrowed down to the people who say they're going to attend, narrowed further to the people who do attend, narrowed further to the people who respond to your offer, get to this page, and buy. So that's a high-level overview of the webinar process. Again, we break down all of these components and other points in the course, but this is a good way to understand the entire flow of a webinar process.